What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined as always by Daniel Starkand. Daniel, after last night, I was worried about what tonight's postgame show might look like. The Dodgers scored 22 runs. It's the most runs the Dodgers have ever scored at Dodger Stadium. It ties the most runs the LA Dodgers have ever scored before. They homer off Josh Reddick. Albert Pujols has 2 home runs. Pollock has 2 home runs, 2 grand slams. The Padres lose. What an absurd night of baseball that we got to watch tonight.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to put it right there. That was just insane. That was the most fun I've had watching the Dodgers this year. I know they got a lot of wins, but for the most part, it's been a grind. It's been a struggle all year. So it felt like they were getting out their frustrations there, not only from just the loss last night or the week they've had so far. Going 1-4. 1-4, the first 5 games of the week against the Diamondbacks and the Marlins. But that just felt like they were getting out their frustration from the entire first half. So yeah, that was a blast right there. I mean, 8 home runs. Felt like every time you look up at the TV screen, a ball's just sailing halfway up the pavilion. So yeah, that was definitely a fun one.
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, I joked early on when the Dodgers jumped out to a 5-0 lead. I tweeted, "There's always something weird that has to happen on nights that you and I are
Yeah,
scheduled to
right.
go long." And so I said, "There's one of 2 things that are going to happen. Either the Dodgers are going to blow this, or they're going to win 20-0 in a 4.5-hour game." Now they win 22-1, so I was pretty close on the 20-0 thing. Thankfully,
Yeah.
miraculously, it was actually not an incredibly long game. Somehow, in the midst of all that, Dodger pitchers made quick work of the Diamondbacks, thankfully, so that we're not here at 11:30 p.m. But absolutely an absurd game. As Laura says, glad we're meeting tonight and not yesterday.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, any of the last few days, it's hilarious how the last time Daniel and I were here, we had a broom talking about a sweep, and then the Dodgers have a rough stretch in Miami. They come back, they lose to the Diamondbacks last night, and then tonight it's one of those pop-up games. Now, we've kind of talked about the Dodgers are so funny this year because they go through these stretches where they're on top of the world. They won I think 9 in a row. Everybody's excited. They sweep the Nationals. Then they lose 3 to the Marlins. They lose to the Diamondbacks, and everybody's pissed off, freaked out, depressed. And then all of a sudden they score 22 runs the next week. So I mean, I know you and I aren't worried about the Dodgers. We've never been worried about the Dodgers. But there's something do you think there's a problem in the inconsistency? I'm not saying, are you worried about them as a World Series contender? But there just seems to be something bizarre about how they can kind of just turn it on, but then sort of fall out of rhythm or something. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only inconsistency like within, weeks or stretches or whatever. It's also inconsistency like within games.
Yeah.
Like whenever this team scores, they seem to score in bunches. Like even if you look tonight, the first 2 innings, they score a combined 9 runs. Then they go, what is it, 4 straight innings without scoring, and then they put up a 7 spot and a 6 spot to close it out. So, yeah, it feels like the Dodgers have just been that way all year. I don't know, hitting's contagious, I guess. It's either everybody hits or nobody hits, which, if I'm being honest, it's not ideal, but I'm not going to complain on a night like tonight, that's for sure.
Yeah. As you said, the Dodgers score 22 runs on 21 hits. They draw 8 walks. They only strike out 4 times. Bizarre night in the fact that it's a home game, so the Dodgers only got up to bat 8 times. They only scored in 4 out of 8 innings, which is obviously a lot, but when you score 22 runs, you would expect that to be stretched out over more than just 4 innings. But unbelievable performance from the Dodgers. So here's the plan for tonight. We're going to talk about player of the game. We're going to recap it. And then I had the idea. I didn't prep Daniel on this, but I'm going to rank all the home runs, and I'll ask Daniel to chime in on whether or not he agrees with me on that. But that's the plan. I mean, obviously, we'll just start right at the top. Offense is going to be the storyline, but I do want to give a shout out here to Walker Bueller because Walker Bueller was great for the Dodgers.
All-star Walker Bueller.
And he started out, 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. But it was right off the bat. I think he had 5 strikeouts in the first 2 innings and just calmed things down for the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers jump out to a 5-0 lead in the first inning. Those are the types of moments where, does the pitcher come back out after a long inning? I believe he might have even batted in the first inning. Does he come back out and struggle, give a couple runs back? No issues for Bueller there. Comes in, settles down, and holds them. I mean, in the bullpen, obviously, Bickford did well. Clevenger gives up the home run. Reed closes things out. So we can talk about Bueller in a little bit, but again, the storyline here is the offense. And they get things going early on. Dodgers put a couple runners on for Max Muncy. He has a 2-run double. Cody Bellinger, 2-run home run. A.J. Pollock, solo shot. Walker Bueller, again, cruising. The Dodgers come back in the bottom of the second, load the bases with nobody out. Justin Turner, grand slam. So all of this against a guy in Caleb Smith who actually dominated the Dodgers the first time they played. But this time, 1 inning pitched, 9 earned runs against him. Brutal from there. So, and then things just settled. I mean, we joked, like, they didn't score in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. We were joking. You could have turned off the game, gone and watched the UFC event, and come back to the Dodger game and not missed anything. The bottom of the 7th, Mookie grand slam. Zach McKinstry and Albert Pujols go back-to-back. In the 8th, A.J. Pollock adds one. And then in the 9th, we get our good old friend being a very loose term, a guy that most Dodger fans despise. He was a cheater for the Astros, not to mention kind of left a sour taste in his mouth just after being part of the Dodgers. Josh Reddick, who it's unbelievable he's even still in baseball, but he is. And he comes into pitch, and yeah, I guess if you want to call the Diamondbacks, depending on
the D-backs.
Fair.
Pitch garbage time for the D-backs. I think that's as low as it gets in Major League Baseball.
Albert Pujols comes up. He takes a 60-mile-an-hour fastball that was letter high and absolutely smashes it into the left field seats. Maybe more embarrassing is that then the pitcher, Garrett Clevenger, comes up and ropes a double down the left field line.
Good looking swing.
Yeah.
Good looking
not bad. Hey, what can we say? Well, University of Oregon, Daniel, we train these guys well. Okay. Just,
That's right.
Clevenger to Reed to close things out. Go Ducks. But,
there you go.
Yeah. And then, this isn't going to be a negative Austin Barnes thing, but then he grounds out. He goes 0 for 4 in a game in which the team scores 22 runs. So, I guess big picture, you look at all this, like, what's your takeaway from this? Is this just a reminder of how potent the Dodger offense is? Is this a reminder of how bad the Diamondbacks are? Is this like you're worried about whether they're going to score any runs the next 2 games, like or the next game? Like, how do you process a 22-1 victory like this?
Yeah, that's honestly, whenever a team goes off like this, that's my biggest worry is what are they going to do the next day? Like we got the All-Star break around the corner. Tomorrow's the last game. After a night like tonight, it's pretty easy to kind of check out a little bit and just kind of sleepwalk through one last game before the break. But so let's hope that's not the case. I will say they are playing the Diamondbacks, who have walked through the whole season here. So, they got that going for them at least. But yeah, I think this is just a reminder of like what this team is capable of. Like, it wasn't obviously to score 22 runs, like it's got to be a group effort, but it wasn't like it was just like one guy, driving in 9 runs or something. Like, it was pretty much everyone. They hit 8 homers, 2 grand slams. Like, guys are getting on base, left and right. So yeah, it was just a fun overall performance. I know, like, as a player, those guys are just enjoying every second of that. Like, that's this is like a pad your stat type of game where you're just looking forward to getting up to the plate like as quickly as possible. So yeah, it was a good game, but I'm just, let's hope they could come out with some fire tomorrow to close out the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. Going through the box score, Mookie Betts 2 for 3 with 4 runs, 4 RBIs, and 3 walks. So he reaches base 5 out of 6 at bats. Chris Taylor gets just 2 at bats. He walks and gets a hit, scores 2 runs himself. Gavin Lux, bases clearing triple. He goes 1 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run coming in for Chris Taylor early on. Justin Turner, 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run. Max Muncy, 1 for 3. He, of course, had the 2-run double early on. Zach McKinstry, also 1 for 3. Both those guys with 1 run and 2 RBI. Albert Pujols, 3 for 6, 2 runs, 3 RBIs. Cody Bellinger, 1 for 5 with the 2-run home run. Clevenger, 1 for 1 with the double. A.J. Pollock, he was the story. 4 for 4 with 2 walks, 3 runs, 2 RBIs. Austin Barnes, 0 for 4 with a walk. Did score 2 runs. Walker Bueller, 1 for 2. Matt Beatty, 2 for 2. So, that's how you get to 21 hits and 8 walks. 29 base runners the Dodgers put on base. Absolutely fantastic stuff from them. So, I guess we can just jump straight into the player of the game conversation here, Daniel. There's obviously lots of guys to choose from. It's funny because normally you just look at the box score, who had the best night. There were some moments that were obviously more important for the play of the game, I should say, in the narrative of the game than others. But when you look at, like, who's the first guy that jumps to mind for you when you think of player of the game? And obviously those joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Twitter, throw your player of the game in the chat as well, and we'll run through some of those as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to give it to Albert just for hitting that homer off Reddick. That was, if I could choose a play of the game, that might be it right
Yeah,
there. Just because of how sweet that felt, just and he destroyed that ball too, for
destroyed.
what it's worth. I mean, I know Reddick's just lobbing it up there, but Albert could still put a good swing on a ball. But I'm gonna go with AJ
Yeah,
Pollock for player of the game. I mean, 2 homers, 4 hits, 2 walks, I think he
yeah,
said. So he was on base every time
six
tonight.
times.
He's one of the hottest hitters in the league. I think he's got like 6 homers now in July.
Yep.
He's got 4 in the last 3 games. He had a stretch in Miami where he like struck out in 6 at bats, and since then he's like 8 for 11 with 4 bombs or something. So it's great to see. I mean, AJ Pollock's a guy who his bat kind of comes and goes, but when he's hot, I mean, we saw it last year during the regular season. He had 16 homers in a 60
Yep.
game season, which is like on pace for like a 45 homer type season. So it's good to see him getting hot. His numbers, like if you look at his season numbers now after tonight, they're actually looking pretty good. So hopefully, it's unfortunate that the All-Star break's coming up here when he's, red hot, but hopefully he could, continue that going into the second half, because if he's swinging it the way he is right now, this lineup is just incredibly scary with all the other guys they have.
Yeah, I mean, because he's the guy that when Corey Seager comes back, you got to find a place for Chris Taylor. Gavin Lux is probably the other odd man out, but if Chris Taylor
Right.
plays second, then you sort of shuffling some of
And
those
I'd
guys.
say, yeah, and I'd say that's a natural platoon kind of, with Lux being lefty and Pollock
There you
being
go.
right in. You got Taylor who could go back and forth between the positions. But I mean, right, the way Pollock's swinging it right now, he's obviously looking like an everyday guy.
Yeah.
At least if he's going to be hitting homers every day, we'll pencil his name right in that lineup.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, the stats of late for him, he's homered in 3 straight games with a total of 4. Over that stretch, he's 8 for 11, added a couple walks. I don't know how many walks he had the last 2 nights, but, a handful of walks. He has 6 home runs in the month of July and just 29 at-bats. That's the most in all of Major League Baseball in the month of July. Fabian Ardaya pointed out his weighted runs created plus is 130 on the season. So that means he's
Really good.
offensively 30% better than league average, which
Yeah.
this is a guy that nobody talks about. And even just the home run. I mean, I know injuries have been an issue for him historically. He's now played 203 games with the Dodgers and has 41 home runs. So that's 33 home run pace. I mean, that's Max Muncy what did he hit? 36 like every year
35.
for 35.
Yeah, 35.
So I mean, to think that his power numbers over the course of his Dodger career are basically in line with Max Muncy's power numbers. Obviously, Muncy's probably trajectory is a little higher right now. That's just interesting. And I'm not saying AJ Pollock's as good as Max Muncy, but it just puts in perspective. This is a guy that I think has failed in the postseason a number of times. And so that probably colors his overall performance in a lot of people's mind. But yeah, he's absolutely on fire. Obviously, and he didn't necessarily even get a cheap one. Pujols got his second one off Reddick. Pollock's were both off of real pitchers. Again,
Yeah, well, you saw Pollock was up there against
no,
Reddick. You
totally.
could see he was trying to get number 3. He
No,
was swinging
completely, absolutely. Looking through the chat, Pollock, the most popular choice here. We got a couple people mentioning Justin Taylor, his first career Grand Slam.
Justin Turner.
Yeah, Justin Turner. What did I say? Jason?
You said Justin Taylor.
Well, it's late. Yeah, Justin Turner, his first career Grand Slam. And that was the big one, right? That was the one that kind of put this game to sleep. So I think there's some legit stuff there. Walker Bueller, another option. As we mentioned, 6 innings, 3 hits, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks. Just getting to 6 innings, letting the bullpen get a little bit of a break. Didn't throw a ton of pitches, just 95. So a nice, easy outing for him heading into the All-Star break, which is nice as well. We had one person saying, Aaron Reddick says Josh Reddick, player of the game, for being owned on the mound, which I think is absolutely.
He was serving him up.
He was serving him up. Yeah, and I mean, that would be the other one. I think Turner, Pujols would be the other one. Obviously, 2 home runs as well. Laura says it's not that late, Jeff. Laura, I've got 3 kids. One of them is 9 months old. So the time is very much relative in my life. But yeah, so I think the point is you've got a lot of options here, which I think is a good thing. Hawaiian Kier points out the bullpen looked good tonight. Yeah, I mean, like Bickford has been solid. Cleven,
Hey,
low pressure outing.
With what we've seen this season, with some of the big leads the Dodgers have had, no lead is safe with some of these bullpen arms. So yeah, I mean, definitely think they deserve some credit for finishing the game out there. Although I think it was Clevenger gave up that homer to a D-backs reliever. Like that was like the eighth craziest thing to
No,
happen in
it
this
was a
game.
different Young. It was a different
Oh,
Young.
was it?
Yeah, because it was his like fifth
Oh,
home
okay.
run of the season or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, never
No
mind.
relievers. Oh my gosh, I had Padre fans in my mention the other day because their relief pitcher hits a grand slam, and I tweeted, "Did the Padres win the World Series last night?" And I missed it. I mean, you would have thought like that the greatest thing of all time had happened to the Padres, and they're like, "This has never happened since 1890." It's like, okay, cool. Like, congratulations. Like, yeah,
Congrats. Yeah.
we just scored 22 runs, so
They just got shut out
yeah,
tonight by the
by the
Rockies,
Rockies.
so
And maybe we should all just tweet, just blow up timelines tomorrow talking about 22 runs like it means something. So
yeah. Yeah.
here's another activity I've got planned for us, Daniel. I ranked the 8 home runs here. And I'll
Okay.
fire through mine, and then you can tell me agree or disagree. My number one home run, the most I don't know, meaningful, significant, important, my favorite. We'll just go. My favorite home run of the game was Justin Turner's grand slam, simply because it put the game out of reach. It was like it put the game to bed early on. So that's number one for me. Number two has got to be Mookie Betts' grand slam. Is a grand slam. Like if he hit a grand slam, it's got to be top two. Turner's again, first of his career. Mookie Betts, I believe that moved it to
Mookie destroyed that ball
destroyed.
too. That's about the furthest that we've seen Mookie hit one, at Dodger Stadium. That one went halfway up. I think the left fielder like didn't even turn and look at that one. He just kind of stood there. That ball was destroyed.
Totally. So those are my top two. I've got Albert Pujols' home run off Josh Reddick, number 3 on my list, because I can't stand Josh Reddick, and anytime Albert Pujols hits a home run, it feels meaningful.
Yeah.
Fourth, I've got Cody Bellinger's home run to go up 4-0. That was kind of the first significant, like, okay, Muncy hits the 2-run double, and every Dodger fan is immediately thinking, that's not enough. Like, we're going to need some more where that came from. Bellinger, guy you want to see turn it on. He absolutely smashes that ball. They go up 4-0. So that's fourth on my list. Number 5 is Albert Pujols' first home run. Again, simply because it's Albert Pujols. Number 6 on my list is AJ Pollock's second home run of the game, most home runs in Major League Baseball for the month of July. AJ Pollock's first home run is number 8 on my list, and then Zach McKinstry's home run gets number 9 on my list. The McKinstry home run is definitely did I say 8? Yeah, sorry, 8.
Yeah, you skipped 7th. It's fine,
but yeah, McKinstry gets last simply because that's probably the most forgettable. Unfortunately, solo home run, didn't have 2 in the game. Very much the game is decided. So, any objections with my ranking of those 8?
Yeah, it got to the point where it's pretty much, too many to count.
Totally.
There. The only thing I would change, I'm putting Pujols off Reddick first. I get why you put the 2 grand slams. They're grand slams. They were the first one at least was when the game was, not quite out of reach yet. But I'm still going Pujols off Reddick. Just that was the most satisfying feeling I felt all season long. You know, Josh Reddick is probably, I think we're both in agreement here. He's definitely probably our least favorite player in all of baseball. I'd have to say, he's definitely up there, if not number 1. I mean, there's a few other Astros guys that could be on that list as well. But just seeing, Albert Pujols destroy a ball off him, that was a great feeling. So I'm putting that 1. Outside of that, though, I'd say you did pretty well with that list.
We're looking for content in a 22-1 game. There's, you'd think there's a ton to talk about. In some ways, there's almost nothing to talk about. But let's talk a little bit about Walker Bueller. We had talked early on in the season. This is a guy whose numbers have been great all year long. The one thing with him was that sort of the underlying metrics never really matched up. Like he always felt like a guy where if you're just going to look statistics and you're going to look at like fielding independent pitching, or you're going to look at batting average on balls in play or strikeout rate or whatever you want to look at as sort of predictive measures, he was one of these guys where the underlying numbers predicted regression for Bueller. But what's actually happened is all those underlying metrics have actually started getting better. He's striking out a lot more guys. He's getting a lot more swings and misses. So it's been fascinating to watch his season because, again, he's always been limiting runs. He's always been getting deep into games. But it's just interesting to see. It was like, okay, the season's going to go one of 2 ways. Either he's going to regress to the mean and all these underlying metrics are going to catch up to him, or he's going to do the opposite, which is what he's done. And so what have you seen from Bueller, not necessarily even tonight only, but just in general, as you've seen this guy? Justin Turner said it, like he's always been a big game pitcher. The difference is he's treating every game like it's a big deal. He's pitching consistently throughout the season. So what have you seen from Bueller that's represented the shift in results that he's been seeing.
Yeah, well, first of all, and you already said it, the first thing I was going to say was that I'm not taking a whole lot out of this specific
Totally.
outing. It was 9-0 by the second inning, and it's also the worst team in the league. So good on him, for getting through six. That's kind of what he prides himself on at this point, getting through a minimum of six. But yeah, it's been a weird year for Bueller. Like you look at the numbers and they're great, but I'm kind of with you. Like he hasn't felt like he's been, as dominant as he had been in the
Yeah.
past. But like you said, that he's kind of starting to get to that level recently. He's missing more bats. I mean, we know he's got great stuff. We know he could overpower, guys with his fastball at, just about any time. And he's got, great breaking stuff as well. So I think we're just seeing him become a more complete pitcher, I'd say. And I think he honestly, we talk about his, at the beginning, how the underlying metrics necessarily weren't as good. I don't think that's necessarily, a negative thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of stuff that he was kind of battling through, and I think he kind of learned from it. He's for most of his life, he's been able to just, reach back and blow it by guys and have success, and I'd say a lot of this season he's kind of struggled, missing bats, and he's kind of had to learn how to pitch. He's had to use his off-speed stuff. He's had to locate better. So I think he's better for that. I like the guy we've been seeing recently, and I have no reason to suspect that that's not the actual guy
Yeah.
he is. I just hope he stays healthy because he's thrown a lot of innings. He's on pace to go over 200 innings for the first time in his career. So I think given the overall state of the rotation, you just hope he could stay healthy. In a perfect world, you would have been able to limit his and Julio's, innings in the second half. But with the way the division's looking, you got a close race between three teams with all the other injuries in the starting rotation. I don't know if they'll get that
Yeah.
luxury. So I just hope he could stay healthy, but he's looked great recently for
Yeah,
sure.
and I see some questions in the chat about pitchers that the Dodgers might target. We'll get to some mailbag questions here in a moment. The thing about Bueller that struck me tonight was the calm that he's starting to pitch with. Even just in the first inning, he gets a strikeout. It appears like he got the second strikeout. The Torey Lovullo, I always don't know how to pronounce his last name. He comes out to sort of whatever, ask to see if it's a foul tip. You get the amazing clip of Dave Roberts just screaming no 4 different times. But if you saw Bueller, like, he just didn't react to any of it. He just stood there, let the whole thing play out. The guy ends up staying at bat, I believe, gets a double. Bueller goes on to get out of the inning, but he always struck me early on. Like, if I'm remembering right, he felt like a very passionate, I don't want to say like explosive guy, but like just a guy that was animated. He was amped up all the time. Tonight, like
Yeah.
I tweeted, he almost looked like sick in some way because he was just so calm and so like stoic out there, which obviously in a game like this is exactly what you want. The team scores 5 runs in the first, you just come back out like nothing happened and go back about your business. When they get 4 more and it's 9-0 after 2 innings, you just keep doing the same thing. And so I feel like there's a piece of that where on one hand, he's been able to harness the success that he has in sort of big playoff type games while also continuing with like the calm, almost like stoic nature that he has in a July game in the middle of the regular season in the past, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. Like he's always been kind of like a little pit bull on the mound, a little
Yeah.
fiery. But I mean, with all the big games he's pitched in October and how great he's been, he's always even though he's been a little fiery, he's always had like a really slow heartbeat. He's been
Yeah.
able to rise up to the moment. He's been able to calm himself down. We've seen him get out of jams in the postseason, like against the Braves when it was like bases loaded, no outs or whatever. He was able to get out of that. So I just think there at this point, like he's getting to the point where there's nothing in his career that he hasn't seen. He's been in every
Yeah.
situation. I still think we'll get that fiery, pit bull type guy, as the season comes to a close, when games are more important. Like you said, this is just the D-backs in July here, but yeah, he definitely has looked calmer, and that's good to see. He's really becoming a complete pitcher, and it's fun to watch. We've known all along he's got this
Yeah.
stuff, so he's really just putting it all together
Yeah,
now.
and I mean, again, the storyline here is the offense. There's almost too much offense to really talk about. But let's talk about some of the individual players. Let's talk AJ Pollock. He was the player of the game for you. For most of the people, I'd say, you reach base 6 times and hit 2 home runs. That's a pretty safe bet to be the player of the game. What does it mean for the Dodgers to have a guy like Pollock doing what he's doing? As I said, he currently has the most home runs in all of baseball in the month of July. He's on an absolute tear. And this is a guy who we have seen him sustain a level of performance like he has right now. The question has always been whether or not he's healthy. He's healthy. This guy who in his Dodger career, as I said, is basically 33 home run pace for a 162 game season. What is it? I mean, like, it feels like he's the type that just gets overlooked, that people forget he's there. And yet over the last 12 months, the shortened season last year, like you said, I think he led the team in home runs. And this year he's been on fire. I think he's second or third on the team in home runs, maybe fourth.
Yeah, he's third. He's third.
Okay. So like
he's got 13 now.
Okay. So I mean,
you 16 last year. So that's not, almost 30 home runs
in like
there,
115 games.
Yeah, that's not even a full season.
So I mean, like, when you think about the way that he's able to lengthen the lineup, how important is a guy like AJ Pollock clicking? How important is that, do you think, to a Dodger lineup?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we were at the beginning of the season when, he was hurt and some other guys were hurt. We were sitting here begging for any sort of production from the bottom of the lineup. Like we didn't ask for much. We said, just be average, just be league average, have a nice little WAR of 0, and we're good. But now, we're getting actual production from the bottom, whether it's Pollock or Albert Pujols or McKinstry now coming off the bench. Like those guys are producing at the beginning, at the end of the lineup. We know what the guys at the top could do, and we saw it tonight. Those guys did their thing. This team has 5 all-star position players. That's probably, I think that's more than any other team in baseball right there. So and that's not even counting Will Smith, who we both feel.
Don't even get me started, Daniel. Don't even get me started.
But I mean, to be getting production like Pollock's been giving at the bottom of the lineup, that just lengthens the whole lineup. There's not an easy out in there, unless, if Barnes is in there, I guess you could consider that an easy out, as we saw tonight with his 0 for 4. But but when Will Smith is in there, this lineup is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so I think it's 4 position players. The Dodgers had 5 all-stars in the lineup because Bueller was there. But, I mean, it's 4 position players plus Cody Bellinger, plus Corey Seager, plus Will Smith. Yeah. So, I mean, Will Smith should be an all-star. Bellinger and Seager aren't because of injuries mostly. I mean, Bellinger hasn't been very good when he's actually been playing. So that's 7 guys right there. And then after that, you throw in Pujols, you throw in Pollock. You throw in McKinstry, you throw in Lux. I mean, that's 11. That's the 11 guys that they have for 8 positions. It's ridiculous. I mean, that is an abundance of riches. And again, compared to a moment where DJ Peters was getting a lot of playing time, Sheldon Noisy was getting a lot, and it was just like, oh, these guys can't hit major league pitching. And so for the Dodgers, Laura says, don't mention Will Smith. Jeff will go off. I know. I apologize. Anybody who follows me on Twitter, I apologize for all the Will Smith tweets. Anytime they name a new catcher, it just pisses me off. Although the guy they named today, Navarez, like you could at least make an argument. Real Muto.
Oddly enough, the last guy was the most deserving.
Don't even get me started. But yeah, I mean, so we're talking about the Dodgers being able to go 11 deep with Gavin Lux and Zach McKinstry being your 10th and 11th best hitters, Albert Pujols, and those are platoon guys. Like we saw, like Pujols against lefties is elite. He's hitting like 350 this season, and I'm sure there's probably some splits with Lux and McKinstry as well, where against one side, they're doing a lot better. So that's the beauty of Pollock, is that when he's your 8th best hitter in a lineup, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah. And again, this is a guy who is averaging 30 home run pace in his career for the Dodgers. And he's your 8th best hitter. He's a guy that most people don't even want playing every day necessarily. So when he gets on these hot streaks, we've seen him extended. Like he had a 60-game hot streak last year. So we know it's sustainable. The question has always been health and comfort. He seems to be healthy. He seems to be comfortable. And that's the thing. I mean, we talk about, you look down the rest of these home runs. It's nice to see Bellinger get going. I mean, we're talking about like how much this guy means. I mean, the Dodgers have been doing this without Seager and without Bellinger. And everybody wants to freak out. Like the Dodgers have the 2nd best record in all of baseball, I believe. They're 2 games back of the division. Like everybody wants to panic when things go wrong. They have the 2nd best record in baseball, and Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager combined have basically given them nothing. They currently have 3 healthy starting pitchers. Like I think the Dodgers are going to be okay. But to see Bellinger turn on a ball. That's good on one hand, but then you look at his final line, and I believe he got out his next 4 plate appearances. So that
Baby step.
that's been the Cody Bellinger experience. But then
Yeah.
thankfully Justin Turner's been really good. I mean, Mookie Betts is an all-star. Most people probably were surprised by that. He's having a down year for Mookie Betts. He's still one of the best 5 or 6 outfielders in the National League. And then again, Pujols has been really good for the Dodgers. Zach McKinstry turning it on again. So offensively, you never expect 22 runs, but you're almost not surprised either. Because it's like, even when the Dodgers pull their starters, like Justin Turner comes out, Chris Taylor got 2 at bats. Like, you take some of these guys out, it's not like scrubs are coming in behind him. Matt Beatty was 2 for 2. I'm not the biggest Matt Beatty guy, but he's a league average Major League Baseball player. Gavin Lux, some of these other guys as well. So it's just remarkable when you look at the 1 through 11 that the Dodgers can throw at you offensively.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like you said, they don't even have Corey Seager, who is expected back right after the All-Star break. We'll see, maybe a few games in, and like you said, Cody Bellinger still hasn't got going. It was good to see the homer tonight. Obviously we know how hot he could get quickly. Sometimes it only takes one swing like that. Unfortunately, that wasn't necessarily the case tonight with him ending up 1 for 5. But hey, like I was saying, it's baby steps. He Cody Bellinger, he's one of the streakiest hitters in the league. I'd say, like, you might say he's been awful all year, and then you look up and he has 1 week where he hits like 6 or 7 homers, and then all is right. So I mean, let's hope that happens at least. Like, it hasn't to this point. It looked like, I think it was like maybe 2 weeks ago when he hit the walk-off homer and he hit another homer. It was like, all right, he's starting to come out of it, and then he hasn't been great since then. But yeah, if they could get him going and Seager back, I mean, that's a great a lineup that just put up 22 runs gets even better. So, and with that, the bench gets better. Like, we're just talking about how bad the bench was earlier in the year. That's not the case anymore. Like you just said, even the last guys on the bench, Matt Beatty, Zach McKinstry, those guys could hold their own in the batter's box, and Albert Pujols has been doing his thing.
Yeah.
So overall, I'd say this, as far as position players go, the Dodgers are pretty set. I'd say I don't really think they need to add anything before the deadline, which is good because we know they're going to have to make some moves on the pitching side. So at least use your prospects for that instead of trying to find another hitter or something.
Yeah, looking through the comments, shout out to Ty, who just got back from the game. Loved booing the former Astros, watching the pitcher double. Fun game to be at. Jason says he laughed so hard when they put Reddick on the mound. I think we all did. I think we all did.
That was so great.
Matty
that made the whole, like, obviously it was a great night already, but that just was like the cherry on top of a perfect night. Just having Reddick in there throwing 60 miles an hour down I wish we would have hit him better, to be honest. Like, the Pujols homer was great. I wish would have been fun to hit like 2 or 3 more homers off him, but we'll take what we could get. It was a fun night.
Matty Man 5 comments, talking about the second best record in baseball. They have the worst one-run game record, worst extra inning game record in baseball.
And extra innings, yeah.
So, you throw some of those things as well. Ryan W., we appreciate the positive words and the encouragement there. Pitching-wise, real quick, I mean, it sounds stupid to talk about the bullpen in a game where your starter goes 6 innings and you win 22-1. But the Dodger bullpen has been a major concern, a major question mark. We've gone through stretches a couple of weeks ago where you and I are on the show talking about how deep the Dodger bullpen is and how we trust all of these guys. And then 2 weeks later, it's kind of a mess. Just looking at the 40-man roster right now, obviously some of these guys have indefinitely been on there, but Caleb Ferguson is a bullpen arm who's currently on the injured list. Victor Gonzalez added to the injured list. Tommy Kahnle on the injured list. Corey Knebel on the injured list. Jimmy Nelson on the injured list. Edwin Usada added today to the injured list. Now, Usada's a guy that, shouldn't be a part of this bullpen, as we've seen so far. A couple of those guys, Kahnle, Ferguson, you weren't expecting anything from to begin the year. But when you talk about Gonzalez on the injured list, when you talk about Knebel on the injured list, when you talk about Nelson on the injured list, on top of the fact that Dustin May and Clayton Kershaw are both on the injured list, and we'll get to Kershaw's good news in a little bit, you start to see, you get to some of these guys, Jake Reed, go Ducks, big Oregon fan over here. So shout out to Jake Reed, but you watch him, you're like, there's a reason that maybe you're making your major league debut at the age of 29. They've got a couple guys on the 40-man roster that Bobby Wall, I've never even heard of before. They added a guy yesterday that Darian Nunez, who I didn't get to see him pitch yesterday. Dave Roberts says expect to see a lot of him. I know Justin Lorber, future Dodgers, he's a big fan of what he's seen out of Nunez. So there's people
Yeah.
excited there. But what do you make? I guess I'll just pause and say, given the injuries, what do you make of the Dodger bullpen right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing, it's a product of honestly the starting rotation, not necessarily the bullpen. Like this team's having bullpen games every other day pretty much. And guys are being overworked
Yeah.
a little bit. I don't think anyone's been like crazily overworked, but it's guys have thrown more than you'd like them to in the
Yeah.
first half of a season. Like you got in a perfect world, you want all these guys going into September and October
Yeah.
fresh, not worn out from a long season. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing you could do about injuries, and I think some of it with what we've seen the last couple of days, I think a lot of these aren't necessarily major injuries, but with the All-Star break taking up 4 or 5 days, you could afford to put a guy on the 10-day IL. And he's only going to miss 2 or 3 games, or whatever it is. So I think maybe with some of these guys, whether it be Gonzalez or Nelson or whatever, like maybe those aren't serious
Yeah.
injuries, but they decided to put him on the IL and get a fresh arm in for these last couple games here. At least I'm hoping that's
Yeah.
the case, because those are two key guys in the bullpen right
Totally.
there that you need healthy, having great years. Nelson especially has been lights out all year, so and he has an extensive injury past, so you hope it's nothing serious with him, and he'll be back shortly after the break. But yeah, I think overall, if you could just get 5 starters that could give you 4 to 5 innings, and obviously the main guys, the Buellers and Julios, will give you more than that. But if you could just have not bullpen games, I think the bullpen's still in a good spot. Like there's still a lot of arms you really like back there. That Nunez guy, I watched him pitch the other night. He looked pretty good. He's got some good stuff. He looks like, obviously, I'm not saying he's as good as Aroldis Chapman, but the way he throws looks like him a little bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't throw nearly as hard. He's like 95, 96, not 102 or whatever Chapman throws. But I think maybe he could be something. We'll see once he throws more. But yeah, I think the depth has certainly been put to the test more than anyone would have hoped.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that's worth talking about when you get to the bullpen is, so right now the Dodgers have Bueller and Urias, the only two starters that you sort of can count on to give you any length. You've got Tony
Right.
Gonsolin, who's being built up to that point. I believe he went 4 1/3, maybe 5 1/3, 5 1/3, I think, his last time out. So he's getting closer, and we know he's a guy that once he is at full strength is not like a 3 to 4 inning pitcher. He's a guy that you're hoping can get you at least 5 and hopefully more. The good news yesterday, Clayton Kirsch obviously placed on the injured list, but he had an MRI and it only showed inflammation. He was back to playing catch already. So it sounds like that could be a situation where he rests through the All-Star break, maybe misses one start on the other half, and then comes back at full strength. They're not worried about that. But when we talk about the bullpen, David Price has been a guy that you count on in the bullpen.
Yeah.
We've kind of wondered aloud, why wouldn't you stretch him out? Well, once Clayton Kershaw went on the injured list, Dave Roberts was like, well, at some point, maybe this makes sense. So it sounds like
Yeah.
that's in play. The other name to keep in mind is Josiah Gray, who many people had as the Dodgers' top prospect. I did a show with Justin Lorber yesterday, which, by the way, if you haven't checked it out, I believe it posted today. Watch it ahead of tomorrow's draft because he has unbelievable knowledge about the Dodgers and who they might be looking at, as well as prospect updates, trade bait, the whole deal. So it's really, really good. Josiah Gray is not the top-rated Dodgers prospect on either Baseball Prospectus or Baseball America anymore. He's not even in the top 50 of Baseball Prospectus, but he's probably right around there. I think he was 55, and then he's been hurt. But anyways, he's a guy that the Dodgers were going to call up earlier in the season, and then he had a shoulder injury. Well, today he pitched 4 innings pitched, no earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 1 hit on 53 pitches. So this is a guy that he's still on a very small pitch count, 53 pitches, but he was dominant tonight. He's been great in the 3 appearances he has this season. I don't think he's allowed an earned run yet. The problem is building up to and getting to a place where he's comfortable. So when we talk about the bullpen, I say all that with, if Price needs to be converted into a starter, then that's one less bullpen arm that you have out there that maybe you feel good about. The flip side is, we've talked about Joe Kelly's been impressive. Phil Bickford's been impressive. You've got a couple guys in those two. And then, I mean, even a guy like Scott Alexander, who before the injury was a guy that you felt like you could count on a little bit. And Clevenger's been pretty solid. Like, the Jake Reeds, the Edwin Usadas of the world, the Mitch Whites, those are guys that I could do without. But Clevenger, at least you're like, hey, if this is your worst reliever, like, that's really solid. From the left side, he throws hard. And then you throw in a guy like Nunez. Who knows if Ryan Pepio can make an appearance as a reliever at some point before the end of the season. But I guess when I look at the bullpen and the struggles they've had over the last few days, there's a lot of ways to explain it away for me where I'm like, I'm not really worried about this. Like Gonzalez is going to be back. Nelson is going to be back. They sound optimistic. Knable's going to be back. And so like, I don't know what to do about that. So let me take all that as a backdrop and then ask you the question that I think a lot of people in the chat are wondering, which is the trade targets for the Dodgers. Obviously, starting pitching is the number one hole on the Dodgers roster right now. Even if Clayton Kershaw comes back and you're not worried about that, that's 4 starters. So then you either got Gray or you've got Price or you've got, I don't know who, Andre Jackson or something that can sort of be that 5th starter. It seems so obvious that starting pitching is where you go, and you just go and trade for a guy who can eat up innings. But let me throw up a hypothetical at you. I've been wondering. I mean, the Cubs being sellers, they've got anything you want, right? You want a relief pitcher, Craig Kimbrell might be available. You want a starting pitcher, Kyle Hendricks might be available. You want a bat, Chris Bryant probably available. Part of me has wondered, rather than attacking starting pitching aggressively, is there a chance that the Dodgers just say, screw it? We're going to look at whatever the strength of our team right now is, and we're just going to freaking dump gasoline on it. And we might only be able to throw 3 or 4 solid starters at you, but holy crap, our bullpen's going to be unbelievable. Or we're going to go trade Chris Bryant, and we might not be able to hold you under 5 runs every 4th and 5th day, but we're going to be scoring 7 to 8. Like, do you foresee any chance? Because the thing is, when you throw out the names of the pitchers who were out there, Max Scherzer probably not getting traded. Wants a contract extension. So aside from Scherzer, part of me is like, do you really want to go and overpay for a Matt Boyd or some of these pitching names that are out there that don't get me excited when maybe you can send a similar package and rent Chris Bryant for a few months or load up in the bullpen with a guy like Kimbrel? What do you think of that? I mean, you've hinted at you already want to go and make starting pitching, and none of these things are mutually exclusive, but how would you attack it? Would you just go and get an innings eater who's league average just to preserve your bullpen, or would you pour gasoline on the strength of the team already?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the health of Kershaw. I mean, if he misses a start and comes back and looks like, because like we got to remember the deadline's not till the end of the month. So in theory, if Kershaw misses a start, he might still be able to come back and make like 2 starts before the deadline. You could at least see how he's feeling, how he's looking. Because if Kershaw's fine, your rotation's still not that bad, like, the way you're projecting things. Like, it's not in a great state right now, but if you have a healthy Kershaw, healthy Bueller, healthy Julio, that's still the best 1, 2, 3 in the game right there.
I mean, I'm very high. We're both very high on Gonsolin.
Yeah. And when Gonsolin's your 4, he's only if you're looking to a postseason series, he would only be starting 1 game anyways. And if the way he looked in his last start, that was the Gonsolin of old. So obviously we got to see more of that before we get completely confident here. But I mean, he's healthy at least, and he's building up. He's getting to the point where he's like a full-time starter now, which is good. And then David Price is your 5. And like you said, their depth would be Josiah Gray, Pepio, Andre Jackson, those guys who are probably guys that aren't ready. But if they have to make a spot start here and there, like, it's not the worst thing in the world. The problem is, I don't know if you could count on health. Like, ideally, you still want to pick up some sort of starter. It doesn't have to be one of the top guys available. It could just be, like you said, a league average type guy to eat some innings. You're not giving a lot up. Like, you're giving a lower level type prospect up in that type of deal. And you just get a guy who, if someone goes down, he could step into the rotation, or guys are down right now, he could step into the rotation right away and just eat innings to help keep other guys fresh. Like, he might not even be a guy who's going to start a postseason game for you. Like, I don't think they necessarily need that. So I think they should pick up some starter, just because you don't have to give up a whole lot for an innings eater type guy. There's guys out there. There's even free agents out there. Like I saw Cole Hamels is doing a showcase. I'm sure the Dodgers will be there. I feel like the Dodgers have added just about every 2008 Phillies player over the years. So why not add one more if he's healthy? But no. But yeah, I think they'll add some sort of starter. If we're talking about impact moves, though, I don't necessarily think it has to be a starter. Like, I think, like you said, like you could definitely go get another high leverage reliever, and no one's going to be like, oh, why do we need that? Like, no, you can never have too many of those guys. I don't know if it's really necessary to get a Chris Bryant per se. We just talked about, the lineup and such. It's looking pretty good. So I don't know if you need to do that, but Yeah, if you want to go get a high impact reliever, I'm all for that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the Bryant move makes less sense in light of what AJ Pollock is currently doing, right?
Yeah.
Because if AJ Pollock is not doing what he is, then you can look and say, well, you could put Chris Bryant as basically your everyday left fielder, and then you
Yeah.
strengthen the bench. Well, if AJ Pollock's hitting like he is, the gap in moving one guy to the bench to add one guy to the outfield is not so much. I think your point on starting pitching is well taken. Where okay, even if Kershaw is healthy, then are you banking on all four of those guys being perfectly healthy for the remainder of the season? Because you do
Right.
need at least four, right? So maybe going and getting a fifth guy as a depth piece where it's like, which I mean, and the flip side, I guess, as I argue myself in my own head, is David Price, right? David Price as your fifth
Yeah.
starter is always a backup option, and he's a guy that you inherently are going to trust more than his regular season numbers suggest once you get to the playoffs. So let me ask you this. When you go and look at starting pitching, would you rather lower the prospect cost and go get, a guy that's just going to eat innings? Or would you rather up the prospect cost and actually go and get, a Kyle Gibson who's been really good, a Barrios from Minnesota who's, really, really, really good and under control for a couple of years? Obviously, Kyle
Yeah.
Hendricks, who is an older guy. The stuff is not overly impressive, but the numbers are really good every year. So where would you fall? Are you going and just saying, get me a Matt Boyd who can just throw me 5 to 6 innings every 5 days and give me a 4.5 ERA, or you say screw it, let's no, I'm not talking about a top 100 prospect, but throw
Right.
some real prospect capital out and try and get a guy who actually moves the needle a little bit from a talent perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the guy. Like you mentioned Kyle Gibson, like he's having a great year. He's also under control for one more season at like under 10 million. So
Yeah,
that's not horrible. But with that being said, I don't think he's like a true
no,
needle mover. Like I'm not doing it for that. But you mentioned like Jose Barrios. I think that guy's a needle mover.
for
Like
sure.
that guy's filthy. So like if it's a guy like him who's under control for a couple more seasons, we still we're both under the impression that Bauer is not pitching again this season and probably never again for the
Yeah,
Dodgers. So that's a rotation
yep,
spot there that you were counting on that you now need to kind of replace. So if you could get a Barrios who's young, who's controllable, he's got great stuff. I think that's a home run right there. I know it'll take a lot to get him, but the Twins the Twins are having a bad year, so I think they're in full on sell mode. So I think that's a guy who might be available for sure. So if you could get a guy like that, I'd go for it. But if it's a Kyle Gibson, a guy who's like a career like average pitcher, I'd say, but is just having a great
yeah,
year, then I'd say probably no on that. But yeah, if you could get a legit guy who's controllable, I think that just solves so many problems. Like I think it's cliche to say you can never have too much pitching, but if we've seen anything this season, we know that's the case because we're in spring training. We were talking about how the Dodgers had 8 or 9 starters, and here we are at the All-Star break. Now we're down to like three like legit guys in the rotation.
yeah.
So if you could get a legit guy, I'm for it. And I know that's kind of how Friedman operates. Like he hasn't really given up top prospects for relievers. It's usually a starter position player because those guys on the whole, I'd say make more of an
Yeah, and
impact.
just to clean it up, Barrios actually only is under team control for one more season, so that was less than I expected. He's got one more year of arbitration. He just turned 27 years old though, and he's been really good. So that would explain why the Twins might be willing to give him up. Daniel and I are going to
Yeah.
be recording on Monday, so I'm sure this will be a topic we'll cover in far more detail. We'll put together some lists of guys who might theoretically be available, but something to watch there. But yeah, you hinted at it. I mean, the other option would be to just go add some high leverage relief guys. Um, you know, what's fascinating about the Dodger bullpen is that on one hand, there's a depth. It's quantity over quality kind of, and yet there is that one piece where it's like, is there anybody in that bullpen that you truly, truly, truly trust to get you 3 outs when you need it? I mean, Kenley Jansen has been really good, but it numerically,
Still
but he's
Kenley.
still
Yeah.
Kenley. It's still like it never feels great, right? And even the same with Trinan, the same with any of the guys out there, Jimmy Nelson, Victor Gonzalez, whoever. Like none of those guys strike you as, and Knable, even if he comes back, will have been back for like a month and a half, maybe before the playoffs start. So that's the piece to me where it's like, well, man, maybe if you can go get a Craig Kimbrell, we saw what he did to the Dodgers. I mean, he looked absolutely unhittable against the Dodgers. You don't make a decision based off a small sample size like that, but he's been fantastic all year. So How would you feel about going and getting a Kimbrel? As you pointed out, the Dodgers, up until this point under Andrew Friedman, have resisted the temptation to go and trade for a high impact, high leverage relief pitcher. Is this year different?
Uh, I think it might be like the reliever moves we have seen them make have mostly been for like rental type guys, like guys in the last year before free
Yeah.
agency. Kimbrel would be an exception to that. I think he's got like 1 or 2 years left. But it kind of makes sense just because, Kenley's going to be a free agent this winter. I know he's having a great year, but I still don't. I think that him having a great year might have maybe priced him out of the Dodgers range. Like, who knows? If he's looking for another long-term deal,
Yeah.
and he has every right to kind of ask for that at this point, given the year he's having. I don't know if the Dodgers are going to be willing to commit that to him. So then you got to find a replacement at closer. And as far as this year goes, you're already way over the luxury tax, so it's not like money is any sort of concern this year. Like, so might as well just add a Kimbrel, and then his salary is kind of similar to Kenley, so that way Kenley leaves after this year, Kimbrel just kind of slots right into that closer spot for a similar contract. So I think it definitely makes some sense. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably going to take a lot. I know he's going to have, if he's available, there's going to be a lot of suitors. So it's going to be a bidding war. I don't know if Friedman's going to, up the ante, what to what it's going to take to get a guy like him. We'll see. But there's going to be other options out there. Guys that are rentals that you could get for cheaper that are having, career type years. So I think they will make some sort of move in the bullpen, but I'm with you. I think if you're going to make a move, might as well get one of those top guys, because we already got a lot of good, a lot of quality guys, but like you said, there's not that one guy who you could truly trust to what you need. 3 outs here. It's a 1-run game. Like, you don't have that guy that you put 100% trust in. I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like Phil Bickford is sort of the barometer. Like, I don't think they should be giving a decent amount up to go get a guy who is a marginal improvement over somebody like Bickford. That's why I would, because I think they have enough of those guys. I think they have enough of guys that they can throw in the 6th, 7th, 8th innings to get outs. Kimbrel's interesting. He's making $16 million this year and $16 million next year, and then he'll be a free agent. So on one hand, he's been unbelievable, so you'd expect the prospect cost to be high. The flip side is, how many teams are comfortable paying $16 million to Craig Kimbrel next season? This is a guy who's 33 years old, just turned 33. So, and has been a roller coaster, like coming off of a pretty poor performance last year. He's been untouchable. So I would be fascinated to see what the cost would be. Obviously, if you're the Cubs and you're in sell mode, you definitely don't want to be paying your closer $16 million next year. So there's probably a little bit of desperation on their end. And again, I think the number of teams that might be comfortable paying $16 million for a relief pitcher might not be that large. So we'll see. But yeah, lots of interesting stuff. And again, if you missed the show that I did with Justin Lorber, it posted this morning, make sure to go check that out, because one of the things he talked about was he threw out a few names of guys that sort of fit the mold of guys that Andrew Friedman typically has been trading away. We both said, like, we don't expect that Keibert Ruiz, his name is going to be the first one mentioned, but we'd both be surprised if he actually get moved, and we talked a little bit about why that is. But he threw out some names of guys lower level in the system. He made some interesting points about when the Dodgers acquire decent prospects, basically Josiah Gray is the only decent prospect they've acquired that hasn't then been traded away. So there's a guy they got in the Ross Stripling trade who could fit into that category. And then some guys who maybe they sell really high on, guys who are having breakout years. It appears the Dodgers tend to trade those guys away as well. So he threw some names, so check out that show as well. But yeah, somebody throws Madison Bumgarner. I please, for the love of God, do not trade for Madison Bumgarner. Yes,
he's got like 3 or 4 years left.
That's what Mario said. 5 years, $85 million. Hard pass on that one. A lot of people wanted him signed for the Dodgers then. They dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jason says, more and more I like the idea of signing Kimbrel and another long reliever. Cam says, I know it's unlikely, just a thought about Mad Bum. A lot of people saying, I don't think I want to see Bumgarner in a Dodger uniform. Ryan asks, I might have missed it. Brewstar, did he get sent back down? The answer is yes. The Dodgers, he did come up. It felt like a very emergency type thing, why he got brought up. He obviously looked good, but clearly the Dodgers have a long-term plan with him that they needed to send him back. Lots more Mad Bum talk. So Madison Bumgarner, whoever suggested that, congratulations. You got the chat fired up. Not very many people excited. About,
You want to make that a package deal with Josh Reddick too, or
gosh.
what?
Yeah, no kidding. That's right. I didn't even remember what team Bumgarner was on. I forgot he is on this this Diamondbacks team. Yeah, unbelievable. So, well, there you have it. Hey, we're right at the end of the show here. Dodgers win 22-1. I mean, that's the headline. We've moved into trade talk. The Dodgers hit 8 home runs. Albert Pujols has 2. AJ Pollock has 2. Justin Turner, first career grand slam. Mookie Betts, grand slam. So you get 2 grand slams. They almost had a third. Gavin Lux had a chance. They had the bases loaded again. He ruined everything by having a 3-run triple. So bummer for you, Gavin Lux, ruining our chances at a 3 grand slam game. But the Dodgers scored 22 runs. We're going to close out with this, Daniel. How many runs do the Dodgers score tomorrow?
I'm hoping for the best here. The way baseball usually works, when you score a lot of runs one night, you don't score much, the next day. So I think I'm not expecting a whole lot tomorrow. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I still think the Dodgers are going to win. So I'm going to say 4-1 Dodgers tomorrow, and then go into the All-Star break on a high note there.
Okay, Merrill Kelly on the mound for the Diamondbacks tomorrow, 5-7 with a 4.60 ERA. Just looking at some numbers on him, Cody Bellinger has hit him well. He has 2 home runs off him in his career. He's hitting over 400. Muncie's hitting over 400. Will Smith hitting 400. Justin Turner hitting 400. Pujols 333. Mookie 333. So you got a bunch of Dodgers who have a track record of hitting him well. Gonsolin on the mound for the Dodgers. Let's see. Eduardo Escobar has 2 home runs in 11 at bats against Gonsolin. So the sub 300 on base percentage All-Star Eduardo Escobar, who, to be fair, I made fun of him with that number. He does lead the league in RBIs, which, whatever you think about RBIs,
he's got 20 homers too. I mean, 20
home runs, 60 RBIs. So he deserves a little bit. Maybe he's not a total scrub when it comes to the All-Star voting goes. But anyways, the Dodgers win 22 runs. Josh Reddick embarrasses himself on the mound, pops out to in the 9th inning as well, which is just a beautiful thing. So let's see. So let's get some predictions here. Laura says 3 runs tomorrow. Aaron Eddick says 5. Robert says 5. Melvin says 4. Mario says 5. I'm gonna go in. I'm going 7. I was real close on my 20 number tonight. I mean, I cheated. It was predicted after the first inning. I still think I was the trajectory there. So I'm gonna go 7. Mario says 5-1. I'm gonna say 7-3. 7-3 Dodgers. I think it's a little tighter. I think Gonsolin performs well. Dodgers jump out to a lead, and maybe the bullpen gets a little lax as we head into the All-Star break. So anyways, hey, we appreciate all those joining us. YouTube, Facebook, Periscope. We appreciate you as always, staying up late, talking about this one. It's a fun one. It's a long one. I'm surprised this many people are still with us. Many people, I assume, would have just turned this one off. But if you stuck around, get to see the Albert Pujols home run off Josh Reddick, you are rewarded for your efforts there. Ryan W. says 5-2. Cornbread says 6 runs. Jason says 7-3. Sounds about right. So we appreciate you joining us. That's Daniel Starkand. I'm Jeff Spiegel. We will be back on Monday. A couple shows to let you know about. Daniel and I will be back on Monday recapping the week, looking ahead to All-Star stuff as well as the second half. Justin Lorber and I are going to record on Sunday night after the first round of the draft. So we'll have a breakdown of whoever the Dodgers pick there. And then we'll also have another piece, video coming out with Justin probably on Wednesday or Thursday, kind of breaking down what the Dodgers did in rounds 2. Well, I guess they don't have a second round pick. Rounds 3 through 20, what they did there. So stay tuned for that. Again, I can't say it enough. If you didn't see the video we posted today with Justin, it's great. So Daniel, thanks for staying up late. Appreciate you as always. Check out Dodger Blue 1958 on social media everywhere, DodgerBlue.com, and Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube for all the post-game stuff. That's Daniel. I'm Jeff. We appreciate you. Enjoy your night. One more game till the All-Star break. Go Dodgers.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions